My friends, I need you to stop whatever you're doing right now. What I'm about to share with you isn't just another political story. It's about something that happened 3 weeks ago that most Americans still don't understand, something that quietly changed the very foundation of how our democracy works. And if you care about your children's future, about the country we're leaving behind, you need to hear this. Before we go any further, please hit that subscribe button right now. Become a member of this community because what we're discussing today affects every single American, and the more people who understand this, the stronger we become together. I was sitting in my kitchen last Tuesday morning reading through documents that most people will never see. Legal papers, court filings, things that don't make headlines but shape our reality. And that's when I saw it. A single paragraph buried on page Zeben and Furzik of a Supreme Court filing that made my hands tremble, not because of what it said, but because of what it meant for every family in America. You see, while everyone was focused on the drama, the tweets, the headlines, something much more profound was happening in the shadows. A systematic dismantling of democratic norms that most people don't even realize has occurred. And the person at the center of it all, he's been planning this moment for years. Let me tell you about Maria. She's a teacher from Ohio, a mother of two, who called me last week in tears. Not because she lost her job, not because of personal tragedy, but because she finally understood what happened to our democracy while we were all looking the other way. Maria represents millions of Americans who are just now waking up to a reality that's been building for years. Michelle, she said to me, her voice shaking, I feel like I've been living in a different country and didn't even know it. And friends, when I heard that, my heart broke. Because Maria is right. We have been living in a different country, and most of us didn't realize when the change happened. But here's what Maria doesn't know yet, what millions of Americans don't know. This didn't start with the obvious moments. This didn't start with, January 6th or, the election claims. This started much earlier with decisions so subtle, so carefully crafted that even people like me, who spent 8 years in the White House, nearly missed them. The real story begins with a phone call I received from a federal judge 3 months ago. A judge I can't name who reached out through mutual friends because they were concerned about something they were seeing in their courtroom, something that kept them awake at night. And what they told me in that quiet coffee shop in Washington, D.C., what they shared with someone they trusted to carry this message to the American people, that conversation changed everything I thought I knew about where we are as a nation. Michelle, this judge said, looking around nervously, the FES system is being rewired from the inside, not with explosions or dramatic moments, but with paperwork, legal precedents, quiet decisions that are reshaping the very meaning of democracy in America. And friends, when a federal judge starts a conversation that way, when someone who has dedicated their life to justice and the rule of law feels compelled to speak out, you listen, you pay attention, and you ask yourself, what is happening that the rest of us don't see? That judge explained to me that over the past 4 years, there have been 47 specific legal maneuvers that have fundamentally altered how our democratic process works. Most happen quietly, without media coverage, just systematic changes to the rules. But here's the part that will keep you awake tonight. These weren't random changes. They were part of a carefully orchestrated strategy designed to ensure that the will of the people could be overridden by the will of a few. I think about my daughters, Malia and Sasha, and I wonder what kind of democracy they're inheriting. Is it the same democracy that my parents believed in? The one where every vote counts, where the Constitution protects everyone, where no one person can change the rules to benefit themselves. And that's when I realized something that chilled me to the bone. Most Americans are asking the wrong question. They're asking, how did we get here, when they should be asking, where are we now? Because, friends, we're not in the same place we were 5 years ago, and most people don't even realize we moved. Let me share with you exactly what happened, but I need you to understand the context first. This isn't about Republican versus Democrat. This isn't about conservative versus liberal. This is about something much more fundamental. This is about whether we still live in a country where the people choose their leaders or whether we've quietly transitioned into something else entirely. 3 weeks ago, while America was focused on other news, a series of legal precedents were quietly established that changed the fundamental relationship between the government and the people. These weren't laws passed by Congress. These weren't constitutional amendments debated in public. These were administrative decisions and court interpretations that redefined what democracy means in America. And the person who orchestrated this understands something that most Americans don't. He understands that you don't need to tear down democracy with force. You don't need tanks in the streets or dramatic coups. You can dismantle democracy quietly, legally, using the system itself as the weapon. I remember sitting across from Barack during his presidency, watching him wrestle with decisions that would affect millions of people. The weight of that responsibility, the constant awareness that every choice ripples through the lives of families across America. Real leadership means feeling that weight, carrying that responsibility with humility and care. But what happens when someone views that power not as a responsibility, but as an opportunity? What happens when the office of the presidency becomes a tool for personal gain rather than public service? And most importantly, what happens when the systems designed to prevent abuse of power are quietly disabled one legal maneuver at a time? That judge I spoke with, they've been watching this transformation happen in real time. They've seen cases where the normal processes of democratic oversight have been systematically undermined, not through dramatic confrontation, but through boring legal technicalities that most people will never hear about, but that change everything. The foundation is being removed brick by brick, the judge told me, and most people won't notice until the whole structure collapses. Friends, I want you to imagine something with me. Imagine you own a house and someone wants to take it from you. They could break down your door, which would be obvious and illegal and would alert the neighbors. Or they could quietly change the property records, alter the deed, file legal documents that slowly transfer ownership without you realizing what's happening until it's too late. That's what's happening to our democracy. The foundation is being legally altered while most of us are focused on the noise upstairs. But here's what gives me hope, and here's why I'm sharing this story with you today. There are people fighting back, not with anger or violence or hatred, but with knowledge, with persistence, with the quiet determination of citizens who remember what America is supposed to be. Like Senator Elizabeth Warren and Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who have been documenting every legal maneuver, working with constitutional lawyers to restore the democratic processes that have been undermined. Young leaders who understand their generation's future depends on preserving the system that gives people a voice, like everyday Americans in communities across the country who are waking up to what's happening and demanding accountability from their representatives. People like Maria from Ohio, who called her senator's office every day for 3 weeks until someone agreed to listen to her concerns about voting access in her district. But friends, knowledge without action is just educated helplessness. And that's why what happens next, what we do with this information, matters more than the information itself. I need you to understand something crucial. This story doesn't end with despair. This story doesn't end with America losing its way forever. This story ends with the American people remembering who they are and what this country stands for, but only if we act. That judge who reached out to me, they didn't risk their career to share this information just to spread fear. They did it because they believe in the power of informed citizens to reclaim their democracy. They believe that when Americans understand what's really happening, when they see through the noise and confusion to the systematic changes underneath, they will respond with the strength and determination that has carried this country through its darkest moments. And I believe that too. I've seen it happen before. I've watched Americans come together when they understand what's truly at stake, not as Democrats or Republicans, not as conservatives or liberals, but as citizens who love this country and won't let it be quietly dismantled while they're not paying attention. The question is, what are you going to do with this knowledge? How are you going to use this understanding to strengthen the democracy that your children will inherit? Because, friends, this story isn't about what happened to us. This story is about what we're going to do next. And that story, the one about how Americans fought back and restored their democracy, that story starts with you paying attention, subscribing to truth instead of noise, and demanding that your representatives remember who they work for. Every time you share accurate information instead of rumors, every time you contact your representatives, every time you vote in every election from local school board to president, every time you choose hope over fear and facts over fiction, you're writing the next chapter of American democracy. That's not just hope, friends, that's history. That's how change has always happened in America. Not with grand gestures or perfect leaders, but with ordinary citizens who decided they wouldn't accept anything less than the democracy they deserve. The American people are stronger than any single leader, wiser than any individual politician, and more committed to freedom than anyone who would try to take it away. And when we remember that, when we act on that knowledge, when we stand together with that truth, democracy doesn't just survive, it thrives. So if this message resonated with you, if you understand now what most people don't realize yet, if you're ready to be part of the solution instead of just observing the problem, then subscribe right now. Become a member of this community. Share this message with others who need to hear it. Because democracy isn't a spectator sport, and the future of this country depends on citizens who are awake, informed, and engaged. Together, we can ensure that the democracy we pass to our children is stronger than the one we inherited. Together, we can make sure that government truly serves the people. Together, we can write a story of restoration, hope, and renewed commitment to the values that make America great. That's not just a promise, friends. That's our responsibility. And I know we're up to the challenge. But let me tell you about something else that happened last week that proves we're already winning this fight, even when it doesn't feel like it. Something that the mainstream media won't report because it doesn't fit their narrative of helplessness and division. I received a letter from a group of high school students in Pennsylvania. These kids, 17 and 18 years old, had been studying the Constitution in their civics class when their teacher mentioned something that caught their attention. She said, almost in passing, democracy isn't something you inherit, it's something you have to earn every single generation. That comment sparked something in these young people. They started asking questions, real questions, not about partisan politics or who to vote for, but about how the system actually works, how bills become laws, how court decisions shape their daily lives, how local elections affect their schools, their communities, their futures. And you know what they discovered? Something that made them angry. Not the performative anger we see on social media, but the righteous anger of young people who realize they've been underestimated and overlooked by the very system they're about to inherit. These students found systematic changes to voting procedures in their county that would make it harder for college students to vote, legal adjustments to polling locations, registration deadlines, and identification requirements targeting their demographic. But instead of just complaining, these kids organized, they researched, they showed up to county commissioner meetings with facts, questions, and informed engagement. And here's the part that will give you hope. The commissioners listened, not because they wanted to, but because these young people came prepared. They knew the law better than some of the people making the decisions. They understood the Constitution more thoroughly than adults twice their age who had stopped paying attention years ago. Within 2 weeks, 3 of the most problematic changes were reversed, not through protests or political maneuvering, but through informed citizenship, through young people who refused to accept that their voices didn't matter. That letter from those students reminded me of something I learned during my 8 years in the White House. The most dangerous threat to democracy isn't the people who openly attack it. It's the quiet acceptance of those who love democracy but have stopped participating in it. Because here's what I know that these students are just learning. Every right we have, every protection we enjoy, every freedom we take for granted exists because someone fought for it, someone organized for it, someone showed up when it mattered and said, this is worth defending. The vote you cast, the speech you're free to make, the religion you practice or choose not to practice, the press that's free to report truth even when it's inconvenient for those in power. None of these things just happened. They were fought for, protected, and passed down by people who understood that democracy requires active participation. And right now, in communities across America, people are waking up to that responsibility. People like Dr. James Martinez, an emergency room physician in Arizona, who started attending city council meetings after he noticed that health department funding kept getting cut during budget discussions. People like Sarah Chin, a software engineer in Texas, who began tracking voting machine contracts after she realized her county was using equipment that security experts had flagged as vulnerable. These aren't political activists or career politicians. These are ordinary Americans who decided that democracy was too important to leave to someone else. Their stories are happening in every community where people still believe this country belongs to its people. But I want to share something with you that might surprise you. Something that Judge told me in our conversation that I haven't mentioned yet. They said that in all their years on the bench, they had never seen more young lawyers, more new attorneys choosing to work in public service instead of private practice. These young people, the judge said, they're not coming to the law for money or prestige. They're coming because they understand that democracy needs lawyers who care more about justice than profit. And Michelle, they're good, really good. They understand the system in ways that give me hope for the future. Friends, what this tells me is that beneath all the noise, beneath all the division and anger that gets amplified on social media, there's a quiet revolution happening, a revolution of competence, of young people and older people alike who are choosing to become educated about how their government actually works and then using that knowledge to make it work better. That's the story that doesn't make headlines. That's the truth that gets buried under the more dramatic narratives of crisis and collapse. America is producing a generation of citizens who understand that democracy is not a spectator sport, and they're showing up to play. So when you feel overwhelmed by the darkness, when you wonder if things can really change, when you question whether your voice matters in a country of 100 million people, I want you to remember those high school students in Pennsylvania. I want you to remember Dr. Martinez and Sarah Chin and the young lawyers who chose justice over profit, because that's who we are. That's who America has always been when we remember our best selves. Not perfect, not without struggles, but filled with people who are willing to do the hard work of citizenship when it matters most. And friends, it matters most right now. Not tomorrow, not next election, not when someone else steps up to lead. Right now, with the information you have in the community where you live, with the voice that only you can use, this is our moment, this is our test. And I know with every fiber of my being that we are going to pass it.